Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling very much, well today, but uh, hopefully I can manage to stay up to the end. So today's workshop is the second from 3 series workshop that we scheduled with Kang. These sessions are made to give you helpful tools to avoid burnout, build your leadership skills, and lead in a real and genuine way. Uh, I would like to thank Kang, who is the founder and owner of the People Onward, uh, who will do this workshop for us. So we will have Q&A sessions, and please feel free to post your questions in the chat box. And at the end, also, you will have the chance to raise your hand, and we can unmute you, and you can ask your questions. Actually, as far as I understand, during the session, also, you can raise your hand and ask your question, unmute yourself and ask your question. Is that correct, Kang?
Yeah, so participants will have the ability to raise their hand and hopefully they can unmute themselves. In that virtually, you might have to unmute them to ask your question. The other thing too is that we do send questions at the end.
Yeah.
Save questions at the end. So if you want to wait until the end of the webinar, I'm happy to address these questions. So
Okay.
there's multiple ways to engage through chat as well as raising hands.
Okay, thank you so much. So I will not keep you waiting longer. Kang, can you please you share your screen and let's start it. Thank you.
All right. All right, Ruturi, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, hey folks, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule today to join me on this leadership webinar, this series of webinars that I'm hosting every month at PACE. Today's webinar is titled Unlock Your Leadership Potential, Discovering Proven Strategies to Inspire, Motivate, and Lead with Impact. Will center around building trust, accountability, and effective communication. As Vatui mentioned, my name is Kang. I am the founder and CEO of People Onward. We are on a mission to unlock the full potential of people to achieve extraordinary performance and align success with purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. And as we mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat, raise your hand, or save your questions till the end. That works as well too. So just a little bit of my background for those of you who haven't attended my previous webinars. I bring over 15 years of experience in the leadership development space. I was a former management consultant working at some of the world's top leadership development companies, where I've successfully helped my clients, primarily Fortune 500 executives, drive superior performance, attract top talent, and help them build cultures that's sustainable, where employees feel productive, engaged, and happy at work. And so now I bring all of those experience with me through my own company, and I help my clients be successful by applying my proven methodologies, empathy, as well as strategies to help them engage the people in ways that are impactful and meaningful. And that's where we are today. So when you think about leadership, it's a big topic. We often think about our current or former managers, what they were like. If you are like majority of Americans, you probably have your fair share of good and bad managers, probably more bad managers than good. And so that's why I'm here today, is to spend some time to talk about what great leadership looks like, because there's too many people out there that hold influential roles that aren't modeling great leadership. And I believe that everybody deserves a great manager, a great leader. And so when we talk about leadership, it's really about business impact. Like at the end of the day, how can we maximize the potential of people to drive superior performance in the workplace, in business, right? And so that starts with having strong senior leadership at the top. Top leadership, they set the tone for the entire business organization, and so it's important to make sure that you have strong leadership that drives high productivity versus poor leadership. Another element why great leadership matters is that with combination of remote work, rapid change of the economy, politics, everything that's around us is creating a lot of chaos. And there's also employee disengagement as well too. That's causing a lot of challenges with business owners trying to manage their business. And so all of this requires adaptive leadership. And adaptive leadership is really a concept around how can you adapt to the ever-changing dynamics of the economy, politics, work, business in order to bring out the best in your team and your leaders, right? And so we'll dive more into what that looks like. But in today's session is really about how can I help you elevate your leadership mindset, avoid pitfalls, and help you create a productive work culture where your employees feel engaged, happy, they want to work for you because they like you, they feel their sense of contribution to your business is meaningful, and they are truly being taken care of, right? And so we'll also talk about what effective decision-making skills look like too as you're a leader in the business and trying to create a successful, thriving business. So moving from good to great requires a different set of leadership tools and also really leadership mindset. I coach my clients on how to, have a great mindset, and that means really, it's really about transformation, right? It's about elevating your skills, your experience, and then applying them to your current situations to drive superior performance. And you can't do all of that unless you're a great leader with a vision, able to build trust within teams, and you're also building other great leaders that can help you make an impact. And so it starts with, of course, leading with impact, driving results through influence long term. Good managers, they hit KPIs, they hit their quarterly goals. However, great leaders, they drive results through influence, they build sustainable systems, cultures, capabilities that can help their people grow and their organization expand over time. Success isn't just hitting, the goalpost, it's building something that's meaningful, that's impactful, and that is sustainable, right? Communication is also a strong element of or characteristics of a great leader. Great leaders, they have the ability to communicate a shared vision, to test out the vision, and they instill inspiration into the people to drive performance. Whereas the good managers are often task-oriented, they execute plans, they manage deadlines, they optimize workflows. Great leaders, they focus on the bigger pictures, they cast out vision, they align values with theirs. And they don't just have a to-do list, they truly live out their values and align people with the mission. Another important component to great leadership is building trust. You might have often heard about the concept of psychological safety, which is really about the notion of creating a work environment where your employees feel safe to make mistakes, and that when they do fail, that they're not penalized for it. They have the ability to reflect and re-strategize how they can do it better next time, right? And it only happens if you have a great leader that is able to create a safe environment for their people to make mistakes. And this environment is where innovation blossom, where creativity, drives, and where good products turn into great products, right? And so by often creating an environment based on trust, you're able to enable people to work, and be themselves in a way that has a strong sense of belonging. They're able to solve problems quickly. with confidence, and they're not afraid to take on initiatives. Great leaders don't just oversee everything. They need to build a team that can trust me. Um, Whereas good managers, they often focus on maintaining control, tracking progress and tasks, and overseeing decision managing risk. Not to say that good managers aren't bad leaders, they're just managers meant to hire to do just that, right? And so I want to distinguish that when I often say, what a good manager does versus what a great leader does, it's really just, you know, telling you what the comparison is between the two, so that you can see for yourself where you fall. Do you fall, as a good manager, or do you fall categorized as being a great leader, right? Our whole intent of this session is really to move you to being a great leader. And that's through all of these elements that I'm discussing with you now. The fourth element is avoiding mistakes. Good managers, they often carry the burden alone, or feel like they're, doing things by themselves, solving problems by themselves, and that they feel like they have all the right answers. They may avoid tough conversations. They may do that to maintain peace. Whereas great leaders, they address the mistakes head on and quite early to avoid a small issue becoming a bigger issue. They also create environments where people they feel trusted, where they're encouraged to collaborate, delegate, and uplift each other. And great leaders, they grow other people to become great leaders, to strengthen that bond. And when you have a collective of great leaders, then you have you become a business that's unstoppable. Great leaders' power, their power doesn't come from everything. They come from a place of elevating people to empower themselves to address mistakes early on, right? And so by fostering open dialogues and feedback and growth, you're able to create a space of innovation and creativity where your people can continue to build on your business. And one thing I would say is that I'm a recovering perfectionist, but what I've throughout my years, what I've learned about myself is that perfection is not the goal. It is progress and adaptability. That's the goal. Real progress comes from trust, not comfort. I think it was Peter Drucker that says that managers do things right, whereas leaders do the right thing. So always keep that in mind. It does require courage when you're addressing mistakes versus avoiding them. Speaking of mistakes, I'm going to cover three big mistakes that people that good managers and great leaders often deal with. The first mistake is micromanagement versus empowerment. Micromanaging is a type of leadership style that falls under, I would say, the category of a managerial person, whereas empowerment is being categorized as great leadership. So I'll distinguish the two here. So micromanagement is a leadership style where the manager closely observes, controls, and excessively involves themselves in the business. And so oftentimes team members often feel like they're being rushed all the time, which diminishes trust within the team organization. Some of the things that micromanagement, some of the characteristics of micromanagement includes constant check-in on progress, making every small decisions versus empowering the people to make decisions by themselves, offering little room for autonomy or creativity. Often this type of leadership style is driven by fear, lack of trust, and perfectionism. And so as a consequence, micromanagement kills initiatives and creativity. Team members feel distrust, undervalued, disengaged, and their innovation is often stifled. And so it's very important that as you're leading, whether you are a manager or a leader, that how you show up means a lot to your team and organization. And so where we want to get you is to empower your team, your division, your organization. And And you do that by delegating responsibility. When you delegate responsibility, you're setting intentions for clarity. You're also embedding trust within your team because you're saying, I want you to take this task on, and I trust your ability to do so without my, my supervisory skills. And when there's disagreements or confusion, you as a leader would coach them throughout the process. And when you do that, you help them build trust and competence. One thing I would say about building trust and competence is that when you think about when I work with, and I've had the privilege to work with some of the best leaders in my career, and the two things that often stand out for me is their ability to be confident in how they lead, and also competence, meaning their ability to lead. So it's the how, but also the why, right? And so you want to be able to, keep those two in mind. That not only do you have the confidence to show up and feel like you're someone that people can trust and listen to, but that you have the skills necessary to do so. And then and when you do have those two things, confidence plus competence, you help your people become more engaged with work and they feel happy with work. And so the benefits of all of this is really to foster accountability, creativity, and innovation, so that can lead to engagement and satisfaction in the employees. And then the nice thing about it too is that when you delegate responsibilities, it frees up your time as a leader to focus on things that truly matter to the business. You might have heard of the 80-20 rule, where you focus on the 20% of the things that give you 80% of the results. And so when you delegate responsibilities, it frees up your time to focus on the 20% that drives the 80%, if that makes sense. Mistake number two that I see here is confident avoidance. We kind of talked about this, but managers, they often delay mistakes or avoid honest feedback to keep peace. And the impact of it is that this creates resentment and allows underperformance to continue and erodes accountability and trust. And so a lot of this has to do with fear of being disliked. If I were to share something that is honest and real, but it's not what my employees want to hear, I could, I might fear that they may not like it, right? And so that's more of a managerial mindset, and you want to be able to move away from that type of mindset, because discomfort just leads to avoidance that grows the issue. The issue continues to exponentially, right? And so, as I mentioned, small issues become bigger problems, creates an environment of distrust and resentment. The solution to this is really to make it a part of your team culture, where you're providing feedback. And one of the things that I often teach my clients is using the SBI framework, which is a situation, behavior, impact framework. And I'll dive into that deeper in a later slide, but it's really about keeping feedback objective and actionable and top of mind. And it also delivers constructive criticism and helps your people to understand how their behavior impacts others and reduces defensiveness. And by addressing issues early on with care and clarity, you're able to, help your employees feel empowered to do the right things, and also, provide constructive feedback to their peers as well too. So that's the nice of this solution of SBA. Vituri, I'm going to pause here for a second. If there's anybody in the chat that has raised a question or raising their hand as a question, or put in the chat, feel free to interject me.
I don't see a question here. So
Okay.
Yeah, there's no one raised the hand. So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand and, I can unmute you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. We'll move on then. The next big mistake that I often see, or that we often see when we're working with, companies and businesses and entrepreneurs and founders and co-founders, is that they often, you know, deal with this decision bottleneck, which is, it happens in leadership when all key decisions flow through one person, usually the leader, which causes delay, frustration, and reduces team efficiency. And so, this decision bottleneck occurs when team members are forced to wait for approval or direction before taking action. The manager becomes the gatekeeper for far too many decisions, big and small. Projects stall because the manager is overloaded and unavailable. And so this slows down execution, kills momentum, and it's a signal for lack of distrust, a signal of lack of trust. And so a lot of these root causes has to do with, again, fear of losing control or making mistakes. Inexperienced managers that are leading teams, lack of clear decision-making tools, more roles and responsibilities, and micromanagement. And so it's important that, as you're thinking about these things, about how do you make decisions and how can you be more efficient when you make a decision, is to really set clear boundaries and guardrails, right? Like, as a great leader, you want to be able to give your team permission to make their own decision, so that it doesn't create this bottleneck. And then, you're encouraging them to take ownership. And when you encourage them to do so, then they have the confidence, to build the confidence to take on responsibilities, and then follow up with questions, and you coach them in the process. One of the ways that you can do so is by saying, what do you think is the best path forward? How can we make this better? You're asking open-ended questions versus yes and no questions, to give your employees the chance to provide some feedback so that they can tell you what's been working, what has not been working. And then you also want to be able to invest in leadership training. When you invest in leadership training, it's a clear indication that you're investing in your people's skills, and that's the one sign of telling your employees that they're being taken care of. Right? Like, some of the top reasons why employees leave their jobs is, one of them is because they're not growing. There's a lack of training and development, and so they're going to be able to create a cultural environment where people can continue to upskill themselves so that they can move up the career if they want to. And then, of course, by empowering the team members to make their own decisions without needing their approval, that's where you place trust. And trust is at the core of everything we do. It's the how we develop relationships, how we influence people, and so it's important that the trust factor is there. And then, one thing I would say is that when you're a leader, you lead from a place of empowerment, not control. So we're going to cover on this slide the foundation of trust and accountability. There are 4 elements that I think what makes a culture great, based on trust and accountability. The first is consistency. When you model behavior that you want to see in other people, it builds trust. Again, people don't listen to what you say, they watch what you do. Actions speak louder than words, right? So you want to make sure that your actions indicate or align with your words. When you make mistakes, admit that you made a mistake. That's very human, and that there's trust. There's no shame in it. You're also able to keep the promises in those sense. You're demonstrating humility and vulnerability to humanize you as a leader. And you're consistent in the way that you treat your people. You build out a fair way to take care of your people. You build an environment based on psychological safety. And your team will do what you do when you say. And so it's important that you keep all of these things in mind. When it comes to effective communication, you want to be able to set clear and intentional expectations and share not just what you do and what they should do, but why they should do it and why we do it. So again, ties into this notion of purposeful leadership. In business, as an entrepreneur, this is literally powered by having um, challenges, and so it's important to remind yourself of your purpose of why you're in business to begin with. By setting clear expectations, goals, roles, and responsibilities, you streamline the process so that the business can run more efficient. And you're open to challenges and trade-offs. You encourage openness in return, and as a result, trust grows with your team, and people feel like they're included and that they're being informed, and your business is better off because of these components. When it comes to accountability, it's important that as you grow and expand, you hold people accountable, including yourself. It actually starts with yourself, because people look at you as a leader. Right? You're going to set high standards. You have to like the leadership looks like. In the leadership space, we say leadership is leading from inside out, which is you got to have enough self-awareness to understand who you are as a leader and how you should, and then lead from that place. Great leaders, they often also focus on results, not just business. They define what success looks like clearly. They use shared goals and KPIs and metrics to drive alignment and managing. And then also be able to celebrate wins, and both big and small and big wins. And then take failure as like failed opportunity, but it's a lesson to learn and improve upon businesses in the future. You also let your team members set their own accountability commitments. And that way it shows them what's possible for them. When they drive their accountability, they get to decide what results look like for them. And in fact, state data shows that people are more committed when they set their own metrics and their own decisions. So it's not about accounting who's to blame for accountability. It's about ownership and clarification. And then the last element here of building a culture of trust and accountability is the trust equation. We talked about this, and I'm going to reinforce this until I can't reinforce it anymore, because trust is so important. Trust is what makes makes it safe for people to speak up, to make a mistake and own up to it, and to say, I can do better next time. Right? You're recognizing people for who they are as from a human level, and then you're also going above and beyond to support them by coaching them as well. As a leader, you want to be able to call out moments of integrity, when people take initiatives, when they follow through, like little things like that. By calling out, recognizing them for these types of positive behaviors can really reinforce positive behaviors throughout your organization. When you recognize people, it shows that you support them, you see them, you hear them, and you truly value their contribution. And it makes it safe for your employees to speak up, to challenge ideas, and to make when things are not working. I've worked with too many clients where they're micromanaging, and it doesn't make it safe for the people to speak. And so small problems become bigger problems, and then by the time you know it, it becomes so big that it's hard to avoid, right? And so culture is everything. Culture based on trust and accountability is everything. And so we're going to be able to build trust shaped by what gets noticed, rewarded, and making sure that that's being repeated. So earlier I talked about the SBI framework, which it stands for Situation, Behavior, Impact, and Commitment. So S stands for the situation. So you're going to be able to describe the context of the situation. Behavior is really about identifying what led to that, what was the behavior that was done or said. And then impact is explaining the effect it had on the room, the situation, the outcome. And then C, commitment, which is aligning what should be happening next time, right? So that the same mistakes doesn't happen to us. So as an example of this framework, you could, I've used this, in yesterday's meeting, Charles, you interrupted twice, which disrupted the flow of the meeting. Can we let each other finish our thought before moving on to the next point, right? So, what you're saying here is in yesterday's meeting, which is the situation, you interrupted twice, which is a behavior, which interrupted the flow, which is an impact. And can we let each other know next time to finish our thought before moving on next time, which is a commitment. So I hope that's a small example, but I hope that helps you understand what SPI framework does and how it can really provide communication that's clear and confident in your teams. Of course, the benefits of all of this is to promote clarity, build decision-making skills, avoid dependency, and encourage strategic thinking. One thing I would say here is that sometimes your employees look up to you as leaders, and so by equipping them with this type of framework, they can actually empower themselves instead of looking to you. And then another tool for communicating with clarity and confidence is meeting mastery. So meeting mastery is really using structured agendas to help organize your thoughts and action steps. It also recaps decisions in writing for reference. It assigns clear next steps as well as follow-up consistently. And so one thing I do that I used to do when I was leading teams was write down these frameworks and what was talked about, what needed to be done, what the next steps are. And you write it down. It actually enables your brain to get into this creative mode where you're thinking about steps to take in order to build more effective communication and confidence in the team. So a decision-making tool that I often share with my clients is the Eisenhower matrix. And the goal here is to really increase 10% faster decision, 7% higher quality inputs, and 20% reduced stress by implementing capabilities. And how the Eisenhower matrix works is, first of all, the Eisenhower matrix was actually popularized by U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who famously said, what is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. And so when you look at this matrix on the left side here, there are 4 quadrants, right? Quadrant 1 is really about do or do it now. It is a combination of urgent tasks plus important task, right? So it's this quadrant is where it needs your attention right now. It's urgent. So examples are last minute client issues, project due deadlines today, emergency team issues, and then quadrant 2 is to decide or schedule it. These are for tasks that are not urgent, but they are important, right? So there are things like long-term planning, growth, relationship building, crucial tasks that but often are overlooked because it's not urgent. So skill building, strategic planning, preventative health and wellness. Keep in mind, this is where leadership, innovation, and meaningful work lives. So you want to be able to live in this quadrant, okay, where you decide, you schedule it. It's not urgent, but it is important, right? Quadrant 3 is the delegate quadrant. It's your assigned task. It's urgent task, but it's not important task, right? It's time sensitive, but doesn't need your time, doesn't require a unique skill set. It's often masked as distraction. So like scheduling meetings, repetitive administrative tasks, most incoming emails or messages. And so we all have been there, right? Where we have to answer emails and we're like, is that important email? Can I wait till the end of the day where I can respond to it when I have more time? So that's where these tasks fall under this type quadrant. The last quadrant, which is the bottom right, the 4th quadrant, is the delete or eliminate or ignore quadrant, where tasks are not urgent, they're not important, they're just time wasting, and energy draining, and you want to be able to eliminate altogether or minimize as much as you can. These are examples like mindlessly scrolling through your emails, unnecessary meetings, meetings that take too much time, that shouldn't take more than the time that's allotted, gossiping, drama, right, politics, like all that are just things that you can ignore or minimize to the best of your ability. And so make sure that you keep this matrix in mind as you're doing your tasks throughout the day. I would even encourage you to every morning before you click your emails, write down like what are some of the top priorities that you need to do today, and start from the biggest priorities that requires your time and energy, and then work your way down to the smallest priorities that requires less time and energy, right? If you're like me, every morning you have a burst of energy, you're more creative in the morning. So by having your second or third coffee, you're able to maximize your productivity. So by prioritizing bigger tasks, you're able to be more productive.
There is a question.
Sure.
Nadia asked, when do you provide this feedback? This was like in the previous slide that you were talking about. Yes, but like with the employees. When do you provide this feedback immediately or SBIC?
So both. Feedback should be provided immediately because the issue, the matter is still fresh in both parties' mind, and you're allowing the ability for your employees or your peers to correct that behavior. And feedback should not be criticism; it should be constructive. That's another important piece that I wanted to mention. And you use the SBI framework. It doesn't have to be on every opportunity where there's feedback. Only when you think like it's going to benefit the situation. And every situation is different. It's up to you as a leader to implement the SBIC framework. It's just a tool that's used. That's for you to use in case you need to pull in the back of your pocket to implement it. But I think I would say the most important thing here is that feedback should be given in a constructive way that is going to help grow the person into the person they need to be, right? And when you come from that place of leadership, then it empowers people to develop their skills and really lead in their own right as a leader, versus having you help them, right? You're there to enable them, to coach them. They have the tools, the mindset, the skills already. It's just up to them to take the initiatives by asking the right questions. And when they come to you, have the ability to coach them and coach them in a way that's sincere, genuine, and that is for their own good, not for your own. Another mistake that managers often make is that it's what's in it for me, not versus what's in it for the team. How can I make my people feel safe to speak up, to be their best version, right? Great leadership is really about being a servant leader to people. That's how I look at it. Nadia, I hope that answers your question. Great question, Doug. So when it comes to mindset shifts that turn good managers into great leaders, I kind of prefaced this already, but you want to be able to lead from a place of influence, not authority. There are too many people, too many of my clients believe that leadership is about, telling people what to do in an authoritative way. That's far from the truth of what great leadership is. Great leadership, they lead by example. They make sure that the words and action match. How they show up in one situation is exactly how they show up in a different situation, because they are genuine, they're authentic, that's who they are, right, at their core. That way, they build trust with their peers, their colleagues, their teams, and throughout the organization. And they ask more questions than they do tell or give answers to. They're curious, they're lifelong learners. You know, they show up consistently, communicate with transparency, and they model, you know, what great leadership looks like. You know, mistake that managers often make is that they believe that because they have a title, or that because they have a position, they're automatically earning trust, that they earn the respect of the people, or that they earn buy-in. And that is far from the truth. You still have to earn people's trust. You still have to earn people's respect. And you don't earn all of that by being a micromanager or being an authoritative leader. You do it by influence. Um, and you know, we talked about, you know, being open and transparent. We, you know, just make sure that you normalize constructive feedback, give feedback where it's appropriate. Another thing I would say about feedback is that if you're in a team meeting and somebody misbehaved, pull them aside, coach them, versus doing it in front of their peers. Because what that does is that it tells everyone else that if you make a mistake, you know, you're going to be shamed for it in front of others. And that's not what great leaders do. They'll pull people aside, talk to them about it. So it gives them an opportunity to, you know, voice their own concerns, and talk about the challenge. So always make sure that you pull people aside to talk about something that went wrong versus criticizing them or providing feedback in front of the team. And that you address issues early on. Now, again, you can't emphasize that enough. Make sure there's an opportunity to do so, do it early on versus having to wait. Great leaders, they're also, you know, they're lifelong learners. They make time for self-improvement. They're rated high in self-awareness and reflection. They're also coachable as well. They don't act like they know it all. They stay curious. You know, for great leaders, they're always on a journey to preventing stagnation, finding ways how they can close the gap between, you know, being a manager and leader. And, you know, they make time for self-reflection, and they learn and they ask themselves regularly, you know, where am I growing? Where am I resisting growth? And how can I continue to stay curious so that I can be the best leader that I can be? Managers, they often believe leadership is about guiding others and by not investing in their own growth. And it's the complete opposite of that. It's actually, you're not only believing leadership is about you and your team, but it's also about investing in your own growth as well as theirs. And so that's what I would say. The final thought here I would say is that leadership isn't a role, it's a responsibility. People look up to you. They observe your every move, every word you say. So you want to make sure that you're authentic. By avoiding, you know, the three pitfalls that we mentioned, you'll come off as more effective in your leadership abilities. And you'll make people feel like they want to follow you, not because they're forced to follow you, right? And so that's yeah, that's it. That's it to my session. So I will stop sharing my screen here. I will put in the chat my LinkedIn profile. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's an easy way to stay engaged. If you want to set up a meeting with me, you can ping me on LinkedIn as well. I'll also put in the chat there my email, so that you can email me as well. Virtually, are there any questions?
No, there is no questions in the chat box. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and we can unmute you. So let's see. Please feel free to ask your questions.
Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate that. It's a good webinar. I guess I don't mean to put you on the spot, but can you share with me what is it that's good about the webinar? So I can outline some specifics if you want to unmute yourself or put in the chat. The other
And
thing I would,
yeah,
oh, go ahead.
go ahead. I
Oh,
Tanya, you can unmute yourself
Oh,
now.
there we go. Okay, can you hear me?
sure.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, we
okay.
can hear you.
So it's we all when it goes into like owning your business, it's like it's a nice thought, right?
Mhm,
But there are some of us who are natural leaders, some of us who are need to learn some things about being in leadership. And like as a leader, you're the face of the company. And
mhm,
right now, especially in the times that we live in, everything is like social. People are leaving their feedback. I mean, it's not it's beyond Yelp now. People are going
mhm,
into businesses, they're taking videos. I mean, you're on the spotlight. And I think that for some of us, whether you're a natural leader or you're learning or you're trying to understand the roles of leadership, this is something like your presentation and your webinar. It needs to be out there, right?
mhm,
Some of us are
mhm,
visual learners, some of us will pick up a book and will read, and everything like that. But I think that more of this is needed. And what's
mhm,
happening right now, there are different level of generations that are working together. And I'm
mhm,
just clearly for me as an example, I mean, I do work full time, and someone came in and it's like, we're having different generation, but you don't know how to lead, you don't know how to work together. And I think that when I first saw the invite or the flyer, it's like, wow, this is really great to know.
mhm,
So I do think that it's needed, and I hope that you continue to build on some of the things that you did include in this slide, and offer webinars to cover some of those areas, because it is needed right now. Respect is
mhm,
out the door. And I love what you said. It's like, trust is earned, and as well as respect. I'm not going to respect you if you do something, like say something. So this is a really good webinar. I feel that it's needed. Some of the things, depending on your generations, is like, we've forgotten, we've lost our way. Some people need to really understand the role of a leader, because there's good and great, right? You start off good,
mhm,
and eventually you want to get to great, to being a great leader, because people are going to want to work with you. People are going to seek you out. People are going to say, hey, you know what? So and so is in charge of, this company. He's great. Come work with him. And that's like a recommendation. Like, you're the face of the company, and even your team, because if they see you as a good or great leader, they're going to follow you. They're going to look up
mhm.
to you and everything. So yeah, so I really do appreciate this webinar. I hope that, you continue and, maybe build on some of the slides that you did today, and, maybe host some other thing, especially going into the new year.
Yeah.
These are tools tools that we need, especially if we're trying to, you know, quote unquote, run a business.
Mhm,
You know what I mean? Because then you're going to train the next person. And if your vision is clear, the people that's on your team, they're going to help you. But I do appreciate
mhm.
it. I really do.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the feedback, and that means a lot to me. And I do the best that I can to embed my work into my clients' organizations to make sure that they're taking care of the people, the create organizations that truly matter, or the business as a whole. And it's not about self-serving leaders. And so, from one thing I would mention here to your feedback is that when you lead from a place of authenticity, and authenticity rooted in empathy, and compassion, and caring for one another, um, then you can't really go wrong. I mean, of course, you can say a few things, like we all do, like we all humans, we make mistakes, we may say a few things that may not uh, sound right, but the what's the intention, right? It starts with intention. What is your intention in doing what you do, saying what you're saying? And one thing that I coach my clients on is if you're unsure how to say something, to deliver feedback, or to communicate with the organization and business, your people within your business, start with intention. Say, my intention here is to make sure that I'm creating a company culture where people feel productive, seen, valued, and that they're being taken care of. And then after that, you can go on and say what you need to say. But it all starts with intention. And when you lead with authenticity tied with good intentions, you're really setting yourself up for success in that approach. And so I hope that you all will continue to join me in other webinars. I think virtually, I don't know when our next webinar is, but I'm sure it's on the newsletter. But I have these every month, and the next one I think the next one might be about purpose, presence, and power in leadership. Is that the next one? I can't remember. But nonetheless, I hope that you all enjoy this session. Are there any other questions or comments?
Just to confirm that the next session will be on 3rd of December. So
okay.
Yes.
December 3rd. Okay.
Yes. So
what's the topic on that?
Let me tell you exactly what we got there. It is Authentic Leadership Webinar, Lead from Within.
Okay, yeah, Lead from Within. Yeah, so that one, mark your calendars for December 3rd, Authentic Leadership. This is really about going into who you are as a leader, and how you show up and impact other people. As I said earlier, leadership is understanding who you are, having the self-awareness to do so, is leading from within. And you can't lead other people if you don't know who you are. And so that's what the next webinar will cover, is diving deeper into who you are as a leader.
Okay. What is here? Ms. Gail said, how do you suggest addressing an business partner and executive director who seems to seek validation?
Ms. Gail, thank you. I think I recognized your name from previous webinar, so thank you again for showing up today. It means a lot to me. So again, your question is, how do you suggest addressing a business partner and executive director who seems to validate, who seeks validation? Okay. So, this is more like a one-on-one conversation. I'm happy to jump on a separate call with you, but to me, it seems pretty broad. I don't know the specifics of it, but what I can share with you is that I do have clients that are often ego-driven. So they seek validation, but do everything they can in the power to amplify their contribution, and even though they don't deserve it, or just to validate themselves. Right? And so and there's a lot of that going on in the workplace. So it's not just you guys dealing with it. So that's number one, is that you're not alone. The second is that when it comes to individuals, understanding individuals, you have to understand their personality style and how they like to communicate. And again, I don't know much about your business partner or your executive director, what the personality style is like, but start with how can you connect with them in a way that ensures that they're being listened to versus being talked at. One of the habits of the seven habits of highly effective people, the book, one of the habits is seek to understand before being understood. So what great leaders often do is they ask questions, they're curious. They don't just jump to conclusions or place judgment on others. They understand the other person's perspective first before providing their own opinion and input. So I would start there. And then the second is really, how do they prefer to communicate? Like, I don't know their personality style, their leadership style. So it's up to me to distinguish, like, how do this person like to be communicated? How can I communicate to them in a way that makes them feel heard? And and start there and let it, let the conversation continue and see where that goes. Your follow-up question, Ms. Gale, is, am I allowed to provide you input for clarity? I'm not sure what you're saying here. Are you asking another question? Feel free to be on mute. Let's see if I can.
Let me unmute.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go. Okay. Now you can unmute yourself. And
Okay.
yes.
Good afternoon. Hi, this is Gail, by the way. So I think that what I feel is that given the opportunity to communicate in whatever the setting is, there is always the validation of this is what I've done, this is who I am. And I feel like sometimes it's ill-timed and not necessarily appropriate for the conversation. And it's not, we often find ourselves in a situation where we're attempting to engage in a dialogue. We find out from one another what the issues are and how we can address the challenges, but he always seems to validate who he is, his qualifications, his education, and those types of things. And so no one wants to be dismissive or stop him, but I think there's a time and a place for that if the situation warrants it.
And have you provided that feedback to him?
Yeah, I have. And I think that often he is deaf because he will, honestly, 99% of the time, it's not necessary. Everyone knows who he is. They typically know his background, but there seems to be, well, let me tell you what I've done and who I am and where I've been. And it just may be a simple question of, what's your role now? And he always harkens back to, oh, let me give you my resume. And it's challenging because it could be, it's kind of like the 60-second commercial or elevator pitch. Keep it simple. No one wants the history of the world, part 6.
And this happens in a variety of situations.
Oh, yes.
Whether there's issues or no issues, he brings up
Yes.
his validation. Okay.
Yes.
I think the first thing I would say is I understand that his place is coming from a place of insecurity, maybe perhaps unmet recognition, or fear of invisibility. So how do you handle someone like him with empathy, but also have boundaries, right?
Yes.
And you do that by recognizing what's beneath it all, right? Like it's insecurity, people who often, self-validate. They're not necessarily arrogant, but they crave attention, acknowledgement, right?
Correct.
Because they feel like they're not being seen as much as they want to. And I understand how frustrating that can be because I've been placed in a situation where it's like, okay, I get it. Like we know who you are, self-validating, right? But, validation seekers, they repeat these achievements because they're just unsure about their role. So it's not to put you down or to say I'm better than you, but more so like give me some clarity and direction. Like I don't know what I need to do, right? Again, going back to insecurity.
Okay.
And so by setting boundaries, and saying, look, like I recognize your achievements, your contribution, your whatnot, right? And say it with genuine care, and see how he reacts. And he continues to do so, then you may want to pull him aside and say, look, I think this is a bit too excessive. And it does, and you have an honest conversation with him. It does, seem like, it's becoming an issue where it's, it can be hard on all of us by having you validate, I admire your drive and how much you care about your work, but let's also make space to hear how the rest of the team is doing as well. Could you please allow other team members to contribute or, say something of that sort, right? because what you're doing is you're recognizing them, but you're also reinforcing the collaboration, the boundaries, if that makes sense.
Okay.
You know, again, that's like, I don't know much about this individual or the context, but you know, just understand that it's really come from a place of insecurity more than anything. And when you consider framing their validation seeking as developmental opportunities, it can really help you as a leader to shift your perspective to want to be more empathetic and want to help them because they're coming from a place of insecurity, right?
Correct.
So
I think that what has happened out beyond that is when I have addressed it, he seeks to justify why. And so I just said to him, we are all clear about your accomplishments and where you've been and where you're going. However, I think it's important for us to read the room. And given the fact that we are in front of certain people for a limited time, we need to address the issues at hand. And if we could stay on topic and stay focused on that, we are better for it. I never say the I, or the you. I always try to make it a we situation. And I think it serves us better as a organization and as partners if we focus on what the ask is and try to communicate as clearly and effectively and succinctly as possible. And so what I've noticed that he started doing in the past week is he says, you address them. I'll be here with you. So as not to, you know, to speak out of turn or to try to take the stage. And that's fine. It's I don't want him to feel that way though. I want him to understand that take the temperature of the room. And if the temperature of the room, someone's asking what your background is or your resume, that's different.
Right. Again, there's a time and place for that. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think you sound like, you know, you're someone that is eloquent in the way that you convey your expectations to other people. And so I think that it's just, again, remind him of reinforcing the boundaries a few times so that he understands where your boundaries are. Sometimes people need that in order to understand where they can and cannot cross your boundaries or the team's boundaries. And so, you know, I think you're modeling what a good leader is. I mean, by having conversations with them and putting some boundaries around them. And so I would say just encourage, you know, to reinforce that, you know, those boundaries and understand that it's really him coming from a place of insecurity.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. You're welcome.
Okay.
I hope that helps.
Yes.
All right. Between, I'm not sure how long, how many more minutes or what's with the time as
we are like
to
over like 5 minutes, so I have to leave, honestly.
Okay.
I have another meeting to join. So
okay.
I don't see any other questions. Otherwise, you could continue with the questions, but there is no other questions, and I don't see anyone raising the hand. So just want to say thank you so much, Kang, and appreciate you. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's session. Hopefully, we'll see you all in 1 month. It's 3rd of December. So the next session will be, you know, in 1 month. Looking forward to see you all there. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And one thing I would say is to all you folks here is one thing to learn, another thing to actually implement and apply these concepts that I taught. So that's where the real transformation happens. So I would encourage you to reach out to me. And I am offering my free strategy call for anyone that's interested. I typically charge $750 per session, which is a lot of money. So, but I'm doing it because of my relationship with Batui and the PACE organization. So I'm happy to help you guys out in whichever way I can. Thank you, you guys, and see you guys next month.
Thank you, everyone.